This singer, over the years, we know him as the people's Calypsonian. The man who gave us Life as a Stage, Stay Up Zimbabwe, and so many others. If I name the rest of the songs, we might leave here without hearing the rest of singers. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple weeks ago, Minister of Legal Affairs came up with another proposal about this constitutional reform. Every election, you're always hearing that, and nothing happening. Well, the name of the song tonight is Constitutional Reform. And the singer, let's welcome Emerald Philip, Brother Valentino. Constitutional Reform. Semi-finalist, Skinner Park, 2014. Ale?
The Constitution is the laws of the land designed to discipline this nation. The Constitution we got to obey, or the consequences we'll have to pay. Although there is a clause for citizens' rights, still for his right, the poor man had to fight. And I am sure that you've heard this one before. They make laws for the rich and laws for the poor. With all these trust, paragraphs, and sections, so much applause. Time to change up this legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. Move the motion now in the parliament. You, the opposition and government. Citizens' rights here are being trampled on. Time to reform the Constitution. Since in the 70s, I gave you the facts about these dreadful bills and these acts. Some of these laws here need amending. Mr. Amender, time to do something. Trinidad with all its freedom of expression cannot hang a murderer without permission. I don't know who these people trying to fool, but we are still under heavy colonial rule. With all these laws, paragraphs, and sections, so much applause. And to change up this legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. The last time that Amnesty had a look, they put TNT inside the black book. So for the sake of our human rights foundation, time to reform the Constitution. They talk about the order and the ordinance, but the big fellas teeth in all the finance. What about this clause 34, where criminals could walk through the door? In Jamaica was Pratt and Morgan, who made their escape through some constitution. It is time we start drafting a new bill, because the price of this present one could kill. Too much across paragraphs and sections, so much applause. Time to change up this legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. In democracy, shows us how biased these laws could be. So as an independent republic nation, time to reform the constitution. Some of these laws are made to be broken. Some of these laws are made to obey. Some of these laws you hear that are spoken. Sometimes don't mean what they say. You see, the ones who are the lawmakers are the same ones who are the lawbreakers. A lawyer will defend a murderer and prosecute the innocent for the mighty dollar. And he will put some transparent and the section so much applause. Time to change our things, legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. The same people who fighting down each other are the ones who advocating law and order. Too much political confusion. Time to reform the constitution. Time to change up things, legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. The last time that Amnesty had a look, they put TNT inside the black book. So for the sake of our human rights condition, time to reform the constitution. They talk about the order and the ordinance, but the big fellas thieving all the finance. What about this clause 34, where criminals could walk through the door? In Jamaica was Pratt and Morgan, who made their escape through some constitution. It is time we start drafting a new bill, because the price of this present one could kill. Too much across, paragraphs and sections, so much law. Time to change all this legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. Consistency in democracy shows us how biased these laws could be. So as an independent republic nation, time to reform the constitution. Some of these laws are made to be broken. Some of these laws are made to obey. Some of these laws you hear that are spoken. Sometimes don't mean what they say. You see, the ones who are the lawmakers are the same ones who are the lawbreakers. A lawyer will defend a murderer and prosecute the innocent for the mighty dollar. And he will put some transparent and the section so much applause. Time to change all things, legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. The same people who fighting down each other are the ones who advocating law and order. Too much political confusion. Time to reform the constitution.
A very good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. You see why I say Calypso is the greatest music in the world, the musical genre. As I do with my students when I teach courses on Calypso, I say, give me any topic under the sun, and I will find the Calypso. Tonight we're going to be discussing constitutional reform with Dr. Henry Jeffrey, our own Dr. Henry Jeffrey. And leading us off here tonight, Calypsonian Valentino, brother Valentino, Emerald Phillip, born in Grenada, raised in Trinidad. Lots of that, a lot of the Calypsonians we think are, they are Trinidadians, but they have heritage in other parts. Many from Grenada, lots of them from St. Kitts, Tobago, and so on. Brother Valentino, famous for the Calypso, Stay Up Zimbabwe. Stay Up Zimbabwe. I remember in the 1980s, that was a big tune. Stay Up Zimbabwe gave us all the tunes like Life is a Stage and so forth. He was a friend of the Grenadian Revolution. And I like to describe Valentino and Black Stalin there, what they call themselves blood brothers. Valentino, Black Stalin, the mighty Duke, we can throw Sparrow in there. He was a little bit before them, but I refer to them as the Black Power Calypsonians. Chogdos, they were all influenced. Maestro, Lord Maestro, the mighty Maestro, tragically died very early. Sang a calypso that predicted his death, actually. And I refer to them as the Black Power Calypsonians, heavily influenced by Black Power. And it was Valentino who sang a calypso called the Roaring 70s. The Americans like to talk about, the baby boom and the 50s and so on. Valentino, the Roaring 70s in the Caribbean, beginning as it were with the 1970 revolution in Trinidad, and Valentino himself sang many calypsos about the 1970 revolution. No, doctor, no, we didn't want any revolution here. All we wanted was Black people to walk in bands. No, doctor, no, we didn't want a revolution. It is why our calypso is the greatest music in the world. We, the younger generation, we are weaned on reggae music. Reggae is the daughter of calypso. It's the daughter of calypso. The mother music of our English-speaking Caribbean is the calypso. Reggae is a daughter. Reggae is a fusion of mento, Jamaican mento, calypso, and American rhythm and blues. And in that sense, it's a kind of world music coming out of our Caribbean. And, if you are from England or America, you could understand the reggae. Actually, a reggae singer singing in standard English. Man to man is so unjust. Children, you don't know who to trust. But Black Stalin would say, what go wrong so must come wrong so. You got to be from the Caribbean to understand that language. That's why it's native. It's native. And then it gave birth to other forms of music. The Barbadians had a thing called spooge. If you remember the Merry Men, they had a thing called spooge. Tom Charles and the Syncopators, they tried with a song they called the Boom. And the Boom was our Shanto beat with the calypso, and it was there for a while, but it never really took off. And then we have variations of the calypso. If you listen to the calypso coming out of Antigua and the Eastern Caribbean, they sing fast kind of calypso. The Burning Flames, the short. Nobody go run me from where me come from. Me papa must nyam, me daddy must nyam. A faster beat and so forth. But it's our music. our music. I like to say Sparrow, who's the greatest calypsonian, the greatest singer for me, the greatest singer of the 20th century. Sing anything. Calypso, reggae, ballads is bestseller. Sparrow bestseller is Only a Fool Breaks His Own Heart. I grew up hearing them big men when they take up the tampi at the rum shop and they're going home, they're singing Only a Fool Breaks His Own Heart. Sparrow bestseller. Marley's bestseller, of course, was Exodus, the movement of Jah people. And I always say Sparrow was born in Grenada, Lambroy, you know, and he went to Trinidad when he was about 2 or 3 months. So he was raised in Trinidad. And then he grounded in Guyana because when the Calypso season finished, he used to come to Guyana. A lot of the Calypsonians used to come to Guyana. Sparrow used to come there. And he used to hang out in Tiger Bay. And they said he wrote a lot of his best calypsos when he would come to Guyana for 3-4 months after the Calypso season. And so during the disturbance in the 1960s, you know, he talked about BG Bondong. He sang a calypso. He said, here they have big trouble in BG. They're burning down Bookers, they're burning down this. But I said to them, they can burn down all they want to burn down. Burn down my hotel in Tiger Bay where all the Wabbins was hang out. He knew Guyana very well because he used to come here to Guyana. In those days, our calypso really was of a very high standard, and because a lot of the Calypsonians used to come through here. Nowadays, when Calypso season finished, they gone to America and Canada because that's where the money and England and so at. But there, Emerald Phillip, Valentino, constitutional reform. Please share the link and let everyone know we're here. Dr. Jeffrey is here and ready to roll, ready to bat. Good evening, Keith. Keith, you remember the boom? Yes, Keith says he remembers the boom. Had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Tom Charles towards the end of his life. He had migrated to Washington, D.C., where I lived. And he was part of a drama group they call Evergreen Productions, led by my countryman, Patrick Battersfield. And I performed with them sometimes. So I had a lot of time to talk to Tom Charles. And he was explaining how the boom came about and so quite a person. And I don't think Guyana ever honored him, Tom Charles and the Cinco Paters, Tom Charles and the Cinco Paters. Yes, some of you are remembering the boom. That's good. Many of you are remembering Only a Fool Breaks His Own Heart. Only a Fool Breaks His Own Heart by the Mighty Sparrow, not Tom Jones. Not Tom Jones may have sung it, but the Sparrow, Slinger Francisco, is bestseller. It's bestseller. Bestseller when them big man, you know, when they feel nice. They say, only a fool breaks his own heart. Good evening to all of you. And thanks for all the feedback we got from last night's program with GHK Lad. You know, sometimes you just hit that sweet spot. And I think last night we kind of did that. I was on Buxtonian Guyanese Morning Time this morning, and there were lots of calls really zeroing in on the program. You see, as I said last night, this multiracial thing, people throw it around, you know. I don't, you know, you put a black face here and an Indian face and you call it multiracialism. I have gone past that. For me, it is the capacity of people of one race to feel the pain of the other race. And then that race has the capacity to absorb the energy, the love that is coming from across the divide. And for me, that is the essence. You know, it's not when you feel only for your own, but it's when you feel for others. And I think GHK Lala thing brought that out, is bringing that out. And last night he obviously touched the spot. As Flash Gordon said, you know, I cannot say that Coolie brother. I have to say that Indian brother. Only in Guyana that people, make that distinction, and so forth. Really, and I thank you all for that, for that feedback, that food feedback. All right, let's get Dr. Jeffrey in here, and let's get going. Dr. Jeffrey, good evening.
Good evening, David, and good evening to your audience.
Yes.
What?
Go ahead.
No, you were saying.
Are you a fan of Calypso?
Well, yes, but not like you. I remember I grew up I grew up largely in England around sometimes and so on, and therefore no, not like you. And anyway, you are teaching the subject, so you are immersed in it.
Yes,
I'm very fascinated.
As you listen to Brother Valentino there on the subject constitutional reform, which we're going to talk about tonight, any thoughts, any reactions?
Yeah. What struck me really was the fact that it is true that political language is almost universally the same across nations. But across nations, they mean different things. So when you talk about constitutional reform in Trinidad, and perhaps even in Guyana, the relevance might be different when you're talking in Jamaica or Barbados, where you have homogeneous societies. But the problems he's seeing in Guyana, we are seeing in Guyana, and he's seeing in Trinidad might be quite different from the problems you're going to face. For instance, what you have just said there about, I didn't see your program last night, but what you are saying there about you must have fellow feelings. Mill said that since 1861. Since 1861, he says a country is fit for representative government. By that he meant democracy. When the people have fellow feelings about, he put it like that, since 1861. I think I said it in my article last week. And it is that fellow feelings that makes you cooperate and operate in a given way. But what happens in a country like Guyana when there's this fellow feeling is not there to the same degree? It's not that you hate anybody or so on, but the fellow feelings are just not there in the same degree. And the result is, what happens then? And therefore, how should you craft the Constitution? Not your language, because your language might more or less remain the same. But how should you craft the Constitution to fit the fact that what you have in Guyana is never what Mill also called a united public opinion. What you have is Indian opinion and Black people opinion, African opinion. So how are you going to hold governments accountable? Please tell me. The Indian opinion goes with the PPP and the African opinion go with the PNC. So tell me, how are you planning to hold these governments accountable? And the central theory of democratic politics is that you have to have this structure on the ground that holds the government accountable. And that is maybe the major problem facing Guyana today. So that has been a Mill problem since 1861. It's not new. Perhaps, as I said in my article, he was perhaps the first to identify it. And then Walter Lewis came up in the 50s, 60s and recognized that there's a need for you to have a different kind of government when you have two people in the same a geographical location with different fellow feelings. You have to, how do you deal with that? Let's have you say that you, like in Singapore, that you are 75% of the population. Chinese are 75%, Malays and others are 25%. Now, Chinese has been in government for 75 years, all the time, and the others are left out. The Chinese we are looking after them, but then people got their own problems. I mean, imagine Singapore when the Biden government held a Democratic Congress last year. It was last year or the end of that. They didn't invite Singapore. Singapore is not considered. It has elections, but it has elections rigged by the ethnic situation. And it has been in power for all these times. So effectively, yes. I mean, when I listen to, yes, Calypso brings that to me, that when I was listening just now, I says, he's using all the right language, but it's not properly contextualized. Not largely because he does not know either.
Right.
Yes. You know, he doesn't know that. I mean, even what Guyana is facing, Trinidad is facing a similar kind of situation. But Guyana is more extreme because we have been losing lives. We have lost as many, per capita, as many lives as they have lost in Northern Ireland over the period we have been fighting. And yet we can't come to a solution, but they could. So effectively, yes, it brings, and that was what I was thinking about when I was listening to the Calypso. Quite apart from the fact it's a nice rhythm and all that on the Calypso.
In your column this week, constitutional reform, fundamental changes required. You started the column in this way: in which properly organized sport in this part of the universe does the following scenario presented by Estabrook Rule editorial exist? And you quote Estabrook News: the fact that the two playing fields differ vastly in size and quality of surface is of no consequence. Two players have chosen to skirt the tenets of the game, thumb their noses at the concept of sportsmanship, and adopt a similar framework of strategies in charting a course to their desired end game. So far, their apparent successes in testing the boundaries of democracy have only been exceeded by the significant lack of repudiation by the respective societies. The answer lies not with the system, but rather with the populace and its lack of adherence to advice proffered by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. One of the penalties of refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. As we proceed towards constitutional reform, and this is you now, the above metaphor needs to be addressed, for it takes an approach usually supported by the PPP that very little is wrong with the political system. All that is required is some tinkering. The fault lines in the politicians who rig elections merely want power and all such stripe. It is true, the major problem is that Guyana does not have a strong system of repudiation to prevent politicians from willy-nilly breaking the rules. And while the editor chose a good analogy in sports, since the intent is to demonstrate that the problem is not systemic, the sporting reality is extensively distorted. You are taking issue with the point of departure in the Estabrook News editorial that the system is weak, and that's where the problem is.
No, the Estabrook News editorial isn't saying that. It says it's saying that the system is weak. The Stabic News editorial is saying it's the people,
The people,
morally deprived,
right,
morally depraved.
right.
Yes, and
Yes.
therefore it's their fault, not the system.
Not the system, yes.
And they're
Yes.
trying to use that sports analogy, if you want to call it metaphor, whatsoever, to make that point. But as I also said, please show me where in any sport, the physical facilities and all those don't matter. Show me where in any sport that people, 2 players or 3 or the whole team are allowed to do what they like. It is not possible. You have the authorities take away the medal years after they win it, as a matter of fact, and said you broke the rules then. So it is not true that that's how sports operate. What we do not have, and that is the point. We do not have authority to hold governments accountable. And that doesn't come from the fact, like the editorial was trying to say, that we don't participate in politics. Who participates in politics more than Guyanese?
There you
Please
go.
I think I give you some statistics. We even vote more than everybody else in the world. We talk politics every day. But some people believe it shocks people how much energy we put in talking politics and all of that than talking business and making money or thieving from one another or anything else. Just politics. And so it is essential that you know that. That's not, we participate in politics, but as I said when I started, we participate in politics in a different way because, as you said, we do not have the fellow feelings of Martin say. We have different fellow feelings. We have been brought to feel over time that we have what we'll call ethnic feelings. We support our ethnic party, you support your ethnic party, this one support the other. PPP, you can talk about corruption for as long as you like and about Exxon running around for as long as you like. The PPP would not lose any vote about it, not a single vote. It would not. You can go out there and talk about all these things. You know, when the people get to problem and say, change the system. We need a system change.
Yeah.
That's what we need. We need a system change. So they will. Then people tell me about Exxon running away with all the money. I said, all right, that's good. And it's good that people are out there and the environmental, and it's good that people are out there doing the work to do that. If they weren't doing it, maybe I'll be part of it. But you got out there. But it's not going to change the management of this system. It's not going to change. What's going to change that is why one of the most important thing in this country today is for us to have an ethnic disparity to show, since the PPP has been in government, particularly since Cheddi Jagan died, how the national wealth has been distributed, and is still being distributed. We want an ethnic audit. We wanted England doing it, Australia doing it for their thing. Do it and show us that part of the argument can die if you do the ethnic audit. And if it is not so, indeed, Kosovo, I think, has that in the constitution. If it is not, if there have been a disparity in terms of black people, well, then you put in place programs to change it. But the PPP just want to say, oh, you get the information and show, because I know that over the period, black people have been disadvantaged. No question in my mind. We have been talking about it and all the things about contracts and all of that and all that. You say, so effectively, that is a massively important element. Of course, the other element is governance. If you had a seat at the table, that could not have happened. You don't have a seat at the table. You have this notion. You have this. We have this divide politically, realistically, where Indians are, for the most part, voting for Indians, and Africans are voting for the most part, voting for Africans, regardless of what the party do or don't do. Bajak Joe himself said it during the teacher strike. Didn't he say, they can go on strike, but when they come down to it, they're going to vote for the PPP? Yes, but he's right. He's right. And that's it. Until you understand that and organize the system to deal with that. But as the Americans have said, as the Carter Center said, as Kwayana, your super friend, Kwayana said, he said, I don't know if he brought it up or whether or not it was ever, but he said the British offered this to the Jagans in the 1960s. But to be truthful, I was very surprised that they did not, because remember this thing was going on in Cyprus, and they offered it to the Greek and Turkish Cypriots, this same kind of thing I'm saying, and it was around the same time. I said, how they did not offer it to Cheddi Jagan? And as it turned out, Kwayana, I think I saw him saying it, writing it, that they did offer him, but what we did not know, and perhaps they didn't know at the time either, was that Cheddi Jagan by 1952, I don't even know if Kwam, he ever told you if he know that Cheddi Jagan was written to the Russian committee? Committing the whole PPP to overthrow world capitalism and all of that in this hemisphere. He ever told?
I will have to ask him. I can't remember.
Ask him was the time.
Yeah. But I know he and Cheddi differed on the Russian
revolution.
Right. And Kwayana took the side of the Hungarians, and Cheddi took the side of the Soviets. Kwayana opposed the Soviet invasion of Hungary. And it was not fashionable in those days to be a Marxist and to do that. But Cheddi was clear. He was going along with the Soviet. All of that led to the second break with them in 1956. That's one of the factors.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you essentially, though, that you got to do a total reassessment of Cheddi Jagan in the context of what we know now.
Yes.
By 1952, Cheddi Jagan has sold us out to the communists. He wrote a letter. This is not gaff. He said, now the Ghana, the whole Caribbean. He said, we are ready, the PPP is ready to help overthrow capitalism in the world. And we are with you. You need us. You need a strong group. Now, when I've always, I don't feel too bad about it. You might, because you're a little socialist yourself. But I was telling Cheddi Jagan this from day one. When he came, and he was my friend. When I was principal Korokoro, I took Cheddi to speak. People at the PNC went to the hierarchy at the PNC. Some of them went here. My friend Malcolm Paris asked him, he's there, said, "Oh, tell you can invite Cheddi." I said, but I thought he's the leader of the opposition. Korokoro is not a party college. Korokoro belongs to the government. So how I can invite the leader of the opposition to a government college society? He said, you won't get in trouble. You get in trouble. And people run to Dr. Reed and tell him. And I think I told on this program already what was Dr. Reed's response. Dr. Reed says he could have invited somebody worse. So now what I'm saying to you, I was telling Cheddi Jagan, and I invited everybody. Nobody cared. When the PNC closed down, all the people don't want to come. No, I was going to be the chair and leave all sort of Mac David and all them to come and talk with Cheddi and so on and let you thing. When time come, give credit to Mark David. He didn't come, but he said Mark Wilfred. You remember Mark Wilfred when he lived, I think he lived in
Yes,
Mark.
Wilfred.
Right, yeah. He said Mark Wilfred, give it to nobody else comes. So what that means, I organize a conference, bring Chedi J. God. And now the people from the government, some ministers, everybody, nobody ain't turn up. So now I had to ask my friend Boston, he's still alive. Hey, you chair this thing, I got to take on Chedi. But what I'm saying to you, you got to do a total reassessment of Chedi J. God and what happened, because now we know for a fact that the American must have known too. Get to know. You think you're going to send a letter like that and the CIA is not all over the place, but that know that. So when they're talking to you, they can't tell you. They can't go out there and say to you, we know this, because then you might know the source.
There you go.
Right? But they're going to say, yeah, but get rid of it. You gotta go. And that's it. So it is that kind of context that we have in Ghana to this day.
So for you, GSK last night said he was not hopeful. He was cynical about the Constitutional Reform Commission and what it could achieve. And he said, when he looked at the composition, he looked at some of the people there, they are there on the commission to hold the PPP line. When you look at people like Kwame McCoy and some of these people on the commission, they're there merely to hold the PPP line. And so he's not hopeful that that much will come of that commission. Do you share that view?
Share that view. I wrote an article on it. I said quite clearly that they are modeling this. They are claiming that they are modeling this commission on what came out of the Harmonston Accord and the St. Lucia Statement. But that's not what happened. The president didn't have any right to choose the chairman. It wasn't so done. Here, the president chose the chairman. I said, what is happening here? The whole thing is rigged in a given direction. And although Hoyt himself did not really grasp the nature of Guyanese society at that time, he would not have accepted all this thing about the president can do this, the president. Yeah. And when I look at the committee, well, it goes without saying that if you, and I said it too, I said, add up, and I didn't know the individuals then. I said, look at the organizations that's going to be here and see who you believe going to have the majority here. And it was surprising that the opposition sit down and accept it. They sit there and accept it. I wrote an article on it. So I'm not telling you anything here that I did not say. How could you have sat down and you have a model in front of you? You have the height model, you have the Armstrong. It calls for different way of doing business. All this is going to end up almost like, well, maybe a little bit more democratic, but like all those inquiry we have all the time from the Walter Rodney inquiry all the time. People find their own people, put their own people where they want. We are thinking gonna happen. But yeah, you see, that is why people always got to keep the powder dry. It's called a constitutional reform. The Americans and one thing the opposition must not let pass.
Must not
let pass. All the people, the European people and so on, the Caribbean, sat down and said that we must have electoral changes. We must have certain things, new list. The Europeans, the Trinidadians. Why is it that we are not pressuring them for these things? Why are we saying you're quiet now? Because we are going to constitutional reform. We want these things. We want biometrics. We want these things in the electoral process. The PPP does, as I said, PPP, you can curse them as much as you like. Once you don't say one thing, change the system.
Change the system. Change the system. Let me read for the audience here your concluding remarks in the column. You say, from the standpoint of the liberal democratic theory, Guyana is a classic generic case of structural political malformation. Today, others such as the USA are developing such deformities, but will more likely successfully deal with them because their political institutions, structures and superstructures, are far more politically inclusive and participative. Believing that by all kinds of jiggery-pokery, it has a hold on the unreformed electoral system, the PPP does not want the fundamental political changes Guyana requires to become a functioning liberal democratic state. I am yet to fathom what the opposition wants. But if the present reform process does not deal with the fundamental issue of Guyana not having a united public opinion, it will not solve the major political problem that faces the country. Quite a mouthful there, and you started to comment on it. You said that the PPP doesn't want a change in the system, and you don't know what the opposition wants. Elaborate on that.
Well, essentially, I know what foreigners want. I know what the very people who were involved in 2021, they tell you get rid of the winner-take-all system from all sides. The Carter Center, everybody telling you that. I know what they want. I am not hearing from the opposition what they want. They seem to, I see the leadership discourse and all of that, but they are talking like they're talking in a unitary country that they, and you know, essentially they're going to win over all these Indian votes, going to come to them. And after 60 years, 60, 70 years, this is what, I don't know, they must have had something up their sleeve, but they certainly ain't getting that. But that is how they're speaking. So effectively what I'm saying, you have to stop this discrimination against Africans and Amerindians too, because they are still the poorest people in this country. Make no mistake about it. You have to get a different form of government, and this winner-takes-all situation has to be reformed. That is what I'm saying. I'm following the West, I'm following this, I'm following European. It has to be reformed if we're going to go through and make the best of the resources we have today.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here, speaking on constitutional reform. As you know, the Constitutional Reform Commission was sworn in recently, and they are supposed to get down to work. We don't know whether the work will be finished before the elections. But as we heard from GHK last night, and we hear from Jeffrey here tonight, there's not very much hope. The very composition of the commission suggests that the PPP is not serious. The fact that the opposition, and by the opposition I'm assuming he's talking here about the parliamentary opposition, has not really laid out a clear framework for constitutional reform and what it wants out of that, suggests that this is not as serious as we want it to be. Nevertheless, it's there, constitutional reform. It's on the books, and we will see what happens. Dr. Jeffrey, if we may pivot a little bit from constitutional reform and touch on a couple of topical issues. And the first one I want to touch on is one that you are, of course, quite familiar with. Somebody saying, please play Constitutional Reform by Dr. Valentino. I did that, but I'll give you some more of it before the end of the program, Ivor. The teachers, the General Council of the GTU met last week, and they have come out and say that they would like to go to arbitration if the government agrees. But if the government doesn't want to go to arbitration, they are prepared. The General Council has ordered the executive to go back on strike, and that this time they would not end the strike until the salaries and negotiations and everything is finished. Your reaction to that?
My reaction is that it is the correct trajectory. The court sent them back to speak, to negotiate with each other. So the court, in my view, maybe I'm wrong and they have better information, sent them back to do what is the first stage in the negotiation. Sit with the other side and try to come on an agreement. When you sit on the other side and try to come to agreement, and you then break down, because it's clearly now broken down. It had broken down before, but the court carried them back to that first stage. The next stage in the industrial relation process is conciliation. Now they are saying arbitration. The court did not conciliate. The court did not sit down there with them and the government and try to work out and the thing break down. The court sent them back to first base. Go and try to get. I would have thought that the next stage is for the Ministry of Labor to say to them, because the Ministry of Labor is supposed to be independent of this. In this state, it's supposed to be. The Ministry of Labor now should say, or the court should direct that, please move to the next stage, which would be conciliation. And if you can't find a conciliator, we will find, the court will find one and present a conciliator to them and let them try at conciliation. It's after they fail at conciliation that you go to arbitration. And now, remember, arbitration is binding. What the arbitrator agreed to. It's not a breakdown anymore. You remember the Armstrong Award and all that. What the arbitrator agreed to is what you will have to live by. Now, as I remembered it, as I said in another article, as I remembered it, the agreement, collective agreement between the teachers and the government suggests that the minister in the final analysis determined the chairman of the arbitration. And therefore, that wasn't like public service where the two parties had to agree. But the fact that it says so, that the minister can determine, doesn't mean that the minister can just determine. The minister will have to go through a whole lot of arrangement and talking and try to get agreement and so on. And then determine, as I did with Father Rodriguez at that period. So effectively, that should be the next stage. Yes, they must move up the process. So, and then you go to arbitration, and the arbitration is binding. So you have to be very careful of who you have on the arbitration. But with you have to be very careful and make your position clear on people's thing beforehand. Don't say, if we say anything about this man that the minister choose, he's going to give me wrong. You've got to say clearly, this is not an individual we would have chosen. So when you put him on guard, let him know, or him or her, sorry, on guard, that so you know clearly that we are not satisfied with this who's chairman or whatsoever, and then you go on, because their law apparently, well, the collective agreement says so.
Do you think the government will go to arbitration, or they will dare the teachers to go on strike again?
Well, The court should allow the teachers to go on strike again. The court should determine that they will go to arbitration.
Okay.
Now, no, that they will go to conciliation.
Reconciliation.
And if it breaks down, then they will go to arbitration. The court should make that determination. It is not, and if they go to, if they think that then they are going against the rules of the court, you are in court for it's the court that sent you back to force base. So the court should really be allowing you now to just standing on your own, and you should be calling and go to, well, chief, we break down now, take us to the next level. And the next level is not arbitration, as I said. The next level is indeed conciliation. And then the court should take you on. It's not for you to even have to go back on strike. After you went, after this court sees the issue, it's the court now that must carry the issue forward and charge people with contempt of court and all sorts of things.
Dr. Jeffrey here. For those of you who came in late and are requesting to see, I'll play a minute or so of Brother Valentino's constitutional reform for those of you who came in a little bit late. Here we go.
Yes, come up with another proposal about this constitutional reform. Semi-finalists, Skinner Park, 2014. Ale?
The Constitution is the laws of the land, designed to discipline this nation. The Constitution we got to obey, all the consequences we'll have to pay. Although there is a clause for citizens' rights, still for his right, the poor man had to fight. And I am sure that you've heard this one before. They make laws for the rich and laws for the poor. With all these tracts, paragraphs, and sections, so much applause. Time to change up this legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. Move the motion now in the parliament. You, the opposition and government. Citizens' rights here are being trampled on. Time to reform the Constitution. Since in the 70s, I gave you the facts about these dreadful bills and these acts. Some of these laws here need amending. Mr. Amender, time to do something. Trinidad, with all its freedom of expression, cannot hang a murderer without permission. I don't know who these people trying to fool, but we are still under heavy colonial rule. With all these jobs, paragraphs, and sections, so much applause. Time to change up next legislation. Time to change up some of these laws. The last time that Amnesty had a look, they put TNT inside the black book. So for the sake of our human rights condition, time to reform the Constitution.
Yes, a little bit there of constitutional reform by Brother Valentino, for those of you who joined us late. Brother Valentino there singing about constitutional reform. Good evening, Vibert White from the East Bank. Good evening, Candy, who is joining us from Skeldon, Corriverton, and she forget to put in Springlands there in the name. Good evening to all of you, wherever you're joining us from in the world. And we have Dr. Jeffrey here tonight. We led off tonight with constitutional reform, and we just had a segment there on the teacher strike. Henry Jeffrey, AUC Kwayana just celebrated last Thursday his 99th birthday. He's a man that is humble, and I didn't even know when I first knew him whether he celebrated birthday. I never thought of Kwayana in terms of birthday. He didn't want people to make a fuss over him. But I took it upon myself to make it public that he was 99, and we did some programs and all of that stuff. And the reaction was quite sobering. A lot of young people really inquired or said they learned of him through their grandmother or their mother, their father. And so some of the first questions we had was whether it was true that he was put in prison in 1953 and the governor was seeing him in his house at the same time, the mystique. But you as a political scientist and political observer, where do you locate Kwayana in the large canvas of Guyanese politics and society?
Well, it's undoubtedly that Kwayana is a stalwart of that era. I mean, he's involved with Nicholson in determining we have a cooperative republic. Remember what Nick? I can't remember the first name of Nicholson.
H.H. Nicholson.
Yes, and so on. Indeed, when I was doing my thesis for my MSc in cooperatives, because I did my MSc in development economics, but I said, let me write on cooperative. Indeed, I went to Loughborough University because I wanted to go to Loughborough College to find out what they were going on with in Guyana with all this cooperating. And I went to talk to Kwayana at his home and in Buxton. To you know, the kind of thing we do when we are doing research. And he was quite open thing. To be truthful, you know, one of the thing I can remember, Kwayana had a cow in his kitchen. I was asking, I sat down there. I mean, I was astonished. I turned and I saw, there's an animal behind you. I'm certain it was a cow.
It was a cow. Yes, it was a cow.
I was certain. I said, why I got a cow in this kitchen? And since then we have met here and there now and then and so on. And no, Kwayana has been there. He has been there as one of the more independent voices, PNC, PPP. You know, he's not taking them on in toto. He has his standpoint and he pushes his standpoint and so on. You know, it's something I try to do myself, that I can be supporting you, but I don't think you can get me to that foolishness and go around the place saying things. I got my own beliefs and so on also, and my judge of where Guyana should go and should not go. If you can't stand it, well, don't stand it. And so, no, Kwayana has been that kind of fourth, fifth person all the time that I have known him. And he remains so, and congratulations for being at 100 years of age. Although yesterday I was listening and saying that they're going to reverse, if he lives up 2 more years or so, he might be able to reverse his age. They're going to be reversing aging in about 2 years. One Harvard professor said. So, you know, of course, that would go to the rich force, you know, the rich is going to reverse that. And Kwayana was, he's a stalwart and he's a founding part of Guyana's power.
The United Nations Human Rights Commission We talked about it the last time you were here, and the spotlight that they shone on Guyana, questioning them on human rights and governance and all of the issues. And then they issued a report. One of the things in that report, they suggest that there should be an investigation of the killings, extrajudicial killings that occurred between 2002 and 2006, what we call the Buxton Troubles. I want your comments on the attitude of the Human Rights Commission and what that means for the fight for human rights and for constitutional change and all of that in Guyana, and also your thoughts on whether there is any need for a commission of inquiry into the happenings between 2002 when there was a jailbreak and 2006 when it ended.
No, I have no doubt that, first of all, I thought that the way Gail was answering the questions of the people in the first place, that suggests that she was being caught by some of these questions, because that's not how the committee is supposed to work. The committee normally sends you its request and the questions it wants answered and all that sort of a thing. But when they start talking about corruption and all that sort of, she appears being caught by it. And I did say in my article about 3 weeks ago that I believe that this might be the result of the vice president, because it's the vice president. They were saying, what are you doing with this thing? Why aren't we, aren't you investigating? And she said there's nobody has made reports to them, which is ridiculous in any case, because you don't make people to make reports when there's such a big international hoorah about something. You have to do some kind of investigation. So from that standpoint, I think that nobody should have any inquiry now at this stage under the PPP government alone. Look at what happened in terms of look at what happened from the Walter Rodney inquiry, from this one about election, about the 2020 elections, the one about the was it the fire?
The fire, yes.
And these things that PPP are picking and pick people, they come, they do what they like. What that would solve? It wouldn't solve anything. Indeed, to have a proper kind of inquiry, other people have to be involved. As they say, you have to have a situation in which the governance issue is already solved and people are willing to sit down and look at the situation to go forward. Like in South Africa, if you want this kind of thing, to bring this inquiry now, the PPP going to go and choose their own people according to the presidential inquiry law and all that sort of thing. And the next thing you know, you will have some people talking about, well, look what happened at Buxton and Pleasance and Feynman, and then you get all without looking at context and without asking, where's Feynman's girlfriend up to now? Feynman's girlfriend was pregnant. He had a lot of guns. If you want to take out the girlfriend, why you think this would happen? Nobody is not going to be dealing with these issues. And it's going to divide the country more than ever. Anytime you don't deal with the governance issue, to deal with this kind of thing would only divide Guyana more than ever. Some people, I said that to some people the other day, said, maybe it needs to divide more before it gets united. I said, it can't be divided more. We've been there for 70 years.
It's there for 70 years. Welcome you. I notice somebody, it's Lily, Lily Gulliver from Maryland, one of my homes. Special hello to all of you who are joining us from Maryland, a place that I lived for 12 to 13 years. So I know Maryland fairly well. I get lost there when I go back there now because everything changed up. I left there it's now 25 years. When I go back there, the first time I realized I'm no longer a resident of Maryland. I used to go back steady, and when I moved, is when I got lost one night. And I said, bye, I don't live here anymore. Good evening to you from Maryland. Good evening to you who are joining us from Barbados. You all now have a proper parliament. You have a seat for the Democratic Labour Party with Mr. Turncross in the floor and going back home to the DLP. Good evening to Ori Newton from Buxton. Ori Newton, you know Badding. You know Badding. I know you're one of the persons at the Badding. He said, teacher, me no mind they call me Badding, but how them a ring the ding. People like you, Bumba, used to call the man Badding. And that's why the man used to chase at you. Good evening to Ingrid King. Good evening to all of you who are joining us. Full house tonight. Full house tonight. Tomorrow night is what? Thursday night? I can't remember who I have on tonight, but I know I have guests on tomorrow night. The opposition leader should have been on tomorrow, but he is traveling, and we couldn't find a spare evening because they're having tomorrow night. I think they're having a town hall meeting or something there in Georgia. So he's going to be on next week. Dr. Jeffrey, the leadership contest in the PNC, you hinted at it in one of your columns, I think the one before this last one. Are we making much ado about nothing? Because they what's his name, Rochdale Ford has joined the contest. We are hearing Ganesh Mahai Paul may throw his hat in the ring. I said, I think this morning, that I am not interested in what they will do and what they wouldn't do. What I am looking to hear from the leaders of the PNC, and indeed the leaders of all parties, is what is their vision for this new era that we have entered. What is your vision? And what is it that you are interested in as far as governance is concerned? Not a little thing here, a little thing there, but a broad picture, a broad vision that includes your understanding of the kind of constitutional reform that is needed, the kind of economic approach that we should take, the foreign policy approach, and overarching thing. Do you think that in the leadership contest in the PNC is the place for those kinds of issues?
But if you're contesting, you should be telling people clearly what vision you have. But I mean, their vision is not much different from the vision of everybody that they've always had. That is the problem. The problem, they can't come and tell you anything great about the vision. I read Ford's position, but it's like people talking since the 60s. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, I heard nothing that is a departure from, I will be better, I will be more caring for the people, and all of that. I mean, well, I don't want to get in the PPP to the PNC leadership thing. I'm still to fathom why they had all this alabaloo about Norton. He's there, he working all the time and all of that. But it's a democratic thing and you should be challenged. I mean, so I'm not nothing anybody. But my thing is that I have heard nothing. As I said in the article this week, what have I heard? I'm hearing the same old thing that we've been hearing for. If you pick up Ford at his when he was launching his leadership contest. I've been hearing that for how many years? It's nothing new. There's not. It's nothing. And I mean,
Let me ask you this from the standpoint of the larger politics. Why is there's such a strong opposition to Norton within PNC circles? It's not universal, but clearly there is a section of the party and perhaps a section of the base that is highly resistant to him. What's the cause of that?
I know I know the propaganda about Norton, and I'm not going to spread it here. But the point is, it has nothing to do with Norton's organizational capacity or his intelligence. I don't think they're particularly more intelligent than him in any ways. And all I hear is about is like proletarian behavior and things like that he's seeing at Bamba Mali and all the time seeing at Bamba Mali. So what? But I really don't know why they have this thing. But let me put it this way. I think when the PNC was thrown out of government, what happened is that they had some kind of program of how they will come back and win government. And then Norton turned up. But remember, the same old people, over the years, remember when we were saying they can't win in 2011, they did win, in the sense that they kept the PPP from having the majority, and in 2015 they did win. So they still think that it's whatever they were doing, they still got it locked. And they can win if they think. And then suddenly Norton turned up, and this whole baby party spoiled because Harmon, Granger, the baby party spoiled by Norton coming on board, and they didn't want him. But I believe they must have corralled him and tell him something of this, because he's going forward. He's not seem to rock in their boat in any ways. He's not making any great statement that is different from what they have been saying. So I'm neither here or there. I mean, that's pretty disappointing in relation to the change in the international global system. You can't go back and rule this country like Granger has been ruling it, or as Jack Joe has been ruling it. It's not going to happen. It effectively locks one ethnic group out of power for a considerable time, so that it can wake up in the morning and knock off 7,000 Indians or so much, and the other side can do nothing. So today, when that is happening, you're complaining, but that's what's happened then. Regardless of if you think you're reforming or not, you did it. And so it's that we are facing. The system has changed, and you need to change with it. You need to have a system that everybody is at the table, and we all can discourse and disagree, not to agree, not to agree, and so on, and move forward and manage this place together. We can't have Exxon and them out there using our division to do what they like. Everybody using our division to do what they like. Even Maduro got feeling using our division to do what he likes.
What he likes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Good evening to Shane Madhu. Good evening to Orange Stephens. Good evening to my friend Nigel Narain, who is watching from Arizona. Who is watching from Arizona, and all the others who are watching from Arizona. Good evening to you. Those of you joining us from California. California, that is a place by itself. Good evening to you. Good evening to you, Andrea Boston. Good evening to you, Andrea. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to Politics 101. If you're joining us late, we're having a big show tonight, as we always do when Dr. Jeffrey is on. Dr. Jeffrey, Maduro Venezuela. Again. Talk to us.
Listen, firstly, Guyana got to be prepared for anything Maduro can throw at them. You understand? I mean, you got to have friends, you got to have good diplomatic relations, you got to have all of that. And you have to have a good army with good thing, and you have to have men who can hold Maduro. Although there was this theory that Maduro never come to the Essequibo. Maduro will come to Georgetown, take Georgetown, cut off the Essequibo, and go there and give you back Georgetown. Because there's this theory. Anyway, but the point is, Maduro is using this as a political game to stimulate his popularity internally. If that is so, which I believe it to be, and people believe it to be, Maduro has to play he can't just do one thing. This got to be played consistently until the elections. And therefore, you don't think Maduro is going to stop until those elections come and gone. He's going to always have to find something to move closer to somewhere. And that's my position on Maduro right now. Once you accept that is what he's doing, he's not going to invade. He's not that crazy, I don't think, but you never know, so you got to be prepared. But on the other hand, you don't think he's stopping this? Before you wake up tomorrow morning, maybe you got a weekly calendar, what you going to do about Guyana to keep your base there stimulated that you will act. And that is what is happening here now. So it doesn't surprise me when he comes up with these things. I don't even pay too much attention to them, because I hope that the government knows that regardless of what happens, they got to be on the ball all the time. So that's my position on Maduro. He's using it to whip up support, and that support would leave him if he seems to be doing nothing on a consistent basis.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here weighing in on the Venezuelan-Guyana border issue and the fact that it never stops. Some of you are expressing the fear that he might try a thing, push the envelope as far as coming over the border to see what would happen. You can't rule anything out with this chap. I think he feels he has the measure of us in Guyana, knows that we are disunited. The government is resisting a real national task force. I rather believe with this new thing they're going to call Norton again to go meet. We are going to wait to see if they're going to do that. But our position remains the same, that we need a national task force. That the hand of the PPP wanting to control everything is really the way to deal with an issue like this. How we get that in our divided polity is anybody's guess. Jeffrey, are you optimistic that we could get a national task force without the overbearing hand of the government and its vice president and so on there?
How are you going to craft that? You can have a national talk show. They can bring you together. Oh, here's a national committee, come and sit down. And when you go and they do what they like, they're the government. Yeah. So how do you have a national task force if they didn't even want to talk to you seriously in Parliament? You have no power. The Constitution give you no power. All they give you power to say is what you want. That's about it.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here. My brother, thank you very much for coming through again. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. And hopefully, as usual, we'll have a packed agenda. There is never a dull day in politics and never a dull day in Guyanese politics. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you and your audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And those of you who join me from BV, better for Wackton, better for Wacom. It's your tongue man, your countryman, as we would say, not tongue man, your countryman, Henry Jeffrey, on tonight. And I know we have a loyal bunch of of viewers from BV every night. I've been looking at the statistics a little recently, and BV, Vreed and Hoop, there's a clump of viewers there. BV is interesting. It's an interesting place, low key, but you know, very sharp place. And sometimes we go by the outward look of these communities and realize we have more in common as communities than our differences. BV is nestled there in between Plaisance and Buxton, if you will, and so sometimes are measured by the standard of those two villages. Thank you all so much for staying with me for another evening. I'm eternally grateful for the support that you have been giving to this show. We have now gone past our third year and counting. Thank you all very much for keeping us on air and ensuring. Tomorrow night, I'll be back for another edition of Politics 101.